Smart Towns. It's a Welsh government-sponsored programme of support that Mentored Môn has been delivering since the year of Smart Towns in 2021. For those of you who aren't familiar with Mentored Môn, we're a social enterprise based in Northwest Wales on Anglesey with three main project areas, so renewable energy, economy and community. So Smart Towns obviously comes under economy, under regen officially with the Welsh Government, but like everything we do, it feeds back into the idea of making these communities prosper. So, like I said, I'm Kiki, I'm the project manager. We've got Rhian on this call, who is Senior Project Officer in the North. Some of you might have already spoken to Rhian. And we also have Sarah Bright in South Wales as well, based in Cardiff. And what we do is we raise awareness of the different kinds of technology and data that you can use to help regenerate the high street. So we offer advice ourselves, or we put you in touch with experts and trainers who give all kinds of different training and advice. We have different workshops, events and networking, some of them online, some of them in person. And we're also really happy to come in person, to your towns, for kind of one-to-one workshops and things like that based on your needs. A big part of Smart Towns is showcasing different success stories. So we think it's really important for people to learn from successes and also from things that haven't gone quite so well. So I'll share some of those stories today, and you can also find them on our website along with other tools and resources. So that's in a nutshell what we do at Smart Towns. And like I said, we've been running the programme since 2021, and we've seen a big kind of shift in people's understanding since then. We've seen over 130 towns engaging. We've had over 1,400 people attending workshops, and we've also facilitated about 30 different digital place plans. I think it's important to say at this point, because lots of people might think, I've had people go, oh, why is my town so far behind? It's really not been a orchestrated rollout at all. It's been raising awareness and supporting people where they've expressed interest. So it's a blessing and a curse that it works like this, because it means that the communities design projects that interest them and that work for them. That there can be a little bit of a feeling of, oh, why are they doing this and we're not? But we're here to support you and to help you bring them forward anyway, so don't worry. And here's just some of the examples of the kind of engagement work that we've been doing. So I thought, because we're quite a small group, if you could all, before we start, just pop into the chat what a smart town means to you. It can be a question, a word or a sentence, just for me to get a kind of idea, and don't be shy because there are no wrong answers. Rhian, I can't actually see the chat. Would you be able to read the answers out for me, please? I'm not sure if Rhian's still with us. I'll just open this. Oh, you're there, Rhian. We got any answers in the chat?
Sorry, I muted myself.
Oh, no problem.
Okay. Sorry, the chat says connected, interconnectivity, digital connectivity, a connected town and community. Connected, efficient, works for the community, a town connected to its community.
Fantastic, brilliant answers. Well, my work here is done, so I'm logging off now. Thank you. No, that's great. There are lots of different things that smart towns can mean, from data-driven decisions, efficiency and sustainability, and like you said, spot on, community engagement. There's lots of talk about smart towns, but to me, putting a sensor up or collecting data, some technology doesn't make you smart. It's what you actually do with that information that makes you smart. And I think it's worth emphasizing here that what we're talking about when we're talking about data is really just knowledge. So it's about having better knowledge to make better decisions. So the official definition is using information or data from different sources by decision makers and business owners to run things more efficiently across. So great answers there. So I won't go too techy with this at all, but when we talk about the technology and the kind of building blocks of the smart town, we mean things like your connectivity. So we call that the kind of the baseline technologies, things like Wi-Fi, so your connection to the internet, LoRaWAN, which is another way of sending information, which I'll go into a bit more later on, for 4G and 5G mobile signal, things like that. Now, these can all help you to collect data. So data on things like footfall, weather, temperature, demographic information, and even things like feedback and surveys can also be useful to you. Then it's about how you display this data. So is this something that is just shared with key stakeholders? Is it something that is shared publicly on dashboards? Or is it something that's shared in reports to businesses and things like that? And then we also have any add-ons, so the kind of nice to haves like apps, digital platforms, digital screens and hubs. So I'll go through some examples of these today. We've already spoken about that. I don't know why that's in there twice. And I think it's important to say at this point as well that we do take the approach of looking at a town holistically. So if you've been to one of our other sessions, you might have seen we do a lot around digital placemaking along with our partners. And what that does is look at the place and think about the challenges or opportunities in that place and how technology can help support or help amplify some of those opportunities. And obviously, one of the main challenges that our high streets are facing is low footfall. And this kind of gets towns stuck in an almost vicious cycle then of, you know, there's not enough services because there's not enough footfall and vice versa. So what we're offering isn't a kind of silver bullet, but it is about measuring the situation so that we can better respond to it. So if you could maybe just pop a few of your challenges into the chat, and we can see as we go through the presentation then if there are ways that the technology and the data could help to address these challenges. Rhian, are you able to read those out to me again?
Yeah. Lack of parking is a huge issue in Aberystwyth.
Brilliant. Well, not brilliant, understandable, but yeah.
Traffic flow from Abigail.
Yeah.
Apathy to technology. Empty.
Hopefully we can help with that.
Yeah. Empty shop stroke buildings, vacant town centre units, which is quite common. Yeah. And cost of parking in Corwen is an issue, as well as underfunding by the county council.
Okay. So I'm sure that some of the solutions we're going to talk about today will be able to help with a lot of those problems. So thank you for sharing those, and thanks, Rhian, for reading them out. So what can we do? Like I said, it's not, unfortunately, a kind of one-size-fits-all answer, but it is so important to have data as solid evidence of these issues. So, for example, if you offer cheaper or free parking and you're able to demonstrate that this has X effect on the footfall, then there's more justification then to be able to you know, to argue to the council for providing that in the future. Likewise, if you had parking sensors on your limited parking in Aberystwyth and you could evidence that these were full, you know, X% of the time, that could then support applications for more investment into parking. And then, of course, you can measure the progress and success of these interventions. You know, how has footfall improved since you've added extra parking and etc. You can also learn more about the residents and the visitor patterns. You can help identify missed opportunities. And it's also important, I think a lot of these kind of projects can maybe focus on, you know, visitors and tourists, but it's important as well that these kind of schemes are used to improve communication and consultation with residents as well, and help everyone be part of the change and not get left behind. So like I said, a main way that we do this is by monitoring the health of the high street, which means by monitoring footfall. And there are lots of different ways of doing this, from the old-fashioned clicker on the door, which is probably still one of the, if not the best ways of actually doing it. But it's obviously not a practical solution when you've got a high street with, you know, lots of different roads, entrances and exits. So there are all kinds of ways of measuring. We'll go through some of these today, like your footfall sensors, which can be things like a beam breaker that person will interrupt the beam and it'll be counted as a person. Smart cameras are probably the most effective way of counting, but they do involve a lot more kind of privacy issues. They don't necessarily use facial recognition, but you are obviously recording people and identifying them as humans. So they're not ideal for all situations. Mobile probe requests, they're quite an effective way of getting the idea of the number of people, but again, you are just counting mobile phones then and not actually people. App counting has been touted as a good way of monitoring the number of people. Again, this comes from phones and specifically from the apps that people have got on their phones. And it's usually companies that are selling this data, collecting and selling it. So that's a way that lots of businesses get their data. And if you were at our workshop last week, you'll have learned that even seismology can be used to monitor high street activity rather than football, but to get a kind of gauge of the amount of people on the street. So a little caveat here, like I said, no system is perfect. We can look at trends and patterns, as you'll be able to see now. Oh, I was just going to put this slide in. This is a slide from a BT presentation at our conference last month, and it shows the kind of breadth of data that companies like BT are collecting. So BT own EE, which is has about 33% of the UK market share. And obviously they have data about people from their phone contracts. So they know what area you're from, things like your gender, even your kind of socioeconomic group. And then they can see, obviously it's all anonymized and aggregated, but they can tell how many people in each town are from which area and, you know, anonymized information about them. So all of this data is being collected by companies already, and companies, high street shops, you know, the big multinationals can all buy this data to better inform their marketing and to make themselves more efficient. So what we're trying to do with the data that we are helping people to collect is to kind of put the independent shops, the organisations, on a more level footing with these companies who can't afford products like this. So I'm not saying that businesses shouldn't use data like this, because that's something that we would like to look into as well. But what we're trying to do is use technology that is already being used to help smaller businesses. And one of the ways we've been doing this has been through the Cisco Meraki Wi-Fi analytics systems. So the Welsh Government procured a load of these at the start of the year of Smart Towns and gave one to every local authority to be able to monitor footfall in one of their towns. It's a kind of pilot, I suppose. So this shows things like dwell time, visit frequency, and heat maps. So you can see, you know, if you wanted to open a shop, or if you had a shop that you were renting out even, you could look at footfall and you could say, oh, that'd be a good place to open a shop. You know, maybe down here where there isn't as much footfall, maybe the rent should be a little bit lower. So that can be useful to look at when you're talking about, you know, empty shops and things like that. But there are all kinds of insights that you can get from this data. You know, are there periods where more local people are on the high street? Are there periods where people are spending more time on the high street, different events and things like that? And how does this system work? So this footfall counting is not dependent on people logging into the Wi-Fi, but it works in the way that when your phone is out and about or when you go home, and it'll automatically connect to a Wi-Fi system that it's already connected to before, while it's looking for those Wi-Fi networks, it's sending out a little signal, an identifier. It's saying, hi, I'm blah, blah. And what these systems do is they count that little signal as a person. That they put it through a process which anonymizes it. So we can't say, oh, that was Kiki's phone. We just know there was a phone in the area for X amount of time. And it looks like the graphs here. And of course, that will only pick up phones that are in the coverage area. So we have the areas clearly mapped out so people can see where exactly is being measured. And this is a project by Mented Morn, where we've installed town Wi-Fi and LoRaWAN across Gwynedd and Anglesey. And this is displayed open access on patreon.io. So towns and businesses can all access this data. One of the benefits of having a town Wi-Fi, apart from counting the footfall, is that you can also have a landing page. So when people log into your Wi-Fi, they can be directed to a website or a platform with any information that you'd like to share with them. So you can have, you know, a local business directory. You can also have them opt into a town newsletter, which, if like this project, so in this project, we ask 5 questions when people log in. So their gender, their age, where they're from, what's their preferred language. So we can use this data to send them targeted campaigns. And so we can send local information in Welsh to local residents who speak Welsh language, or we can send information about outdoor activities for people who have been to a particular town for an outdoor activity. So all kinds of possibilities there as well. And this is all delivered through a completely anonymous system that is all GDPR compliant. So if you go on Patreon, you can see things like footfall and dwell time, you can see environmental sensor data, and also demographic information. So you can see how long people have stayed in the town. Like I said, people answer questions when they're looking in. Lots of towns as well have Wi-Fi in place where they don't collect this kind of information, they just get the footfall data from it. So it all depends how far you want to go with things. But one of the things that we do in our local workshops is we get people to guess which towns we're talking about based on the data. So on the profile of, you know, why people are visiting, the percentage of Welsh speakers, and we find that more often than not, people are actually able to accurately guess which towns we're talking about. And we can use this data in all kinds of ways, so kind of unexpected ways that have come out of it as well. So for example, looking at a town like Pwllheli, I'd expect, based on my knowledge of the town as quite a touristic town, that there would be a large proportion of English speakers there. But in fact, Pwllheli has one of the highest percentage of Welsh speakers, which is obviously great to see. But you can then start to ask more questions, like, obviously, tourists are more likely to log into the internet Wi-Fi. And also some Welsh-speaking people are likely to choose English because they prefer to read in English, even though they may speak Welsh. So Welsh could still be underrepresented there. So we can then show this data to businesses who are overwhelmingly monolingual, just serving in English, and say, you know, were you aware that this amount of your customers choose Welsh as a first language? So there's loads of little insights like that that you can get. Can you hear this video?
No.
No. Okay, I'll fast forward it then. Sorry. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. This is a business in Bethgelert saying that how they use the demographic information to model their business. So they know that during half terms and things like that, they'll need to order more bites. And then we've also got a video from a deli in Mold. Now they were one of the first businesses to get on board with the Smart Towns program in Mold. And what they found that Monday was the day that traditionally lots of the shops close. They've actually found that the town was busy by looking at the data. So they decided to open on a Monday and found that it was actually one of their busiest days. So they're hoping that this can increase confidence in other businesses, which will allow them to open, which will then in turn make the high street busier and better for everyone involved. So just some real life examples of using data. We are trying to get more businesses involved in this way in using the data. Like I said, there's nothing smart about just collecting this data. It's what you actually do with it. And one of the ways that you can do this is by comparing your shop footfall to the high street. So it's something really simple you can do. We've actually got a spreadsheet that you can download from our website, so you can so it can figure this all out for you itself. But there's an anonymous example here of a town. And it's footfall versus the town footfall versus the building footfall versus the income in January. And as you can see, it's all kind of where you'd expect it to be. You know, they're getting a big portion of the town footfall in actually, so they're doing well in January, and the income is like that as well. But when you go to August, the town footfall goes right up, and the building footfall actually goes down, as do the sales. So with that data, we're actually looking at the cold hard data, you'd start to think, well, what's the problem here? You know, the town is busier. Does the shopkeeper know that there are that many people on the street? Is it that signage to the shop isn't what it could be? Is it that the products in the shop appeal to local people but not to the people who are visiting the street for whatever reason in August? So is there another offer that they could put on to appeal to these people? But without actually looking at that data, they might not realise the opportunity that is there. So there's loads of potential there when you have access to the data. And it can also help benefit the decision makers as well. So you can classify towns according to usage. And on Patreon, we do actually allow you to filter by the type of town. So, for example, if you were from a seaside town, you could compare your footfall to other seaside towns. You could see, you know, if certain things are affecting you in the same way. So this can, you know, if you've got a business and you can see that other businesses, well, not other businesses, but other towns are suffering from similar things, that can maybe be a little bit reassuring. What we also see is different patterns in different towns. Like some towns will be way busier during English half term, while others will be way busier during Welsh half term. So what is it about those? What is it those towns are doing to appeal to one or the other? That's something that maybe both towns could be learning from, and both of them could be increasing or working towards a more kind of sustainable pattern of tourism. The data can also be used to monitor things like the effect of road closures, or any kind of disruption or intervention, or things like, you know, free parking or reduced parking. And I think I covered all those. So you can see from the patterns here on the screen what we mean by seeing a trend or a pattern. So while we might not have counted every person that's on the street in Llangefni, we can tell that Llangefni has a very specific pattern, with Sunday obviously being really, really quiet. We can see that other towns like Bethgelert and Bala are more influenced by probably half term. They're in October. And Llanfestiniog, which is a tiny little town with literally a shop and a pub, has Fire Llan once a year. So for anyone wondering, about carrying on with investing in an event, you can see there that it's really worthwhile investing in, and that there were over 200 people in the tiny village on that day. And another case study, you can see here, Llangefni, Gwyl Cefni, which is an event that Menter Môn hosts. It's a grant-funded event. And sometimes, you have to justify the spending on these events. You also have to get food vendors in. And I remember last year an email going out to all the staff asking if anyone knew somebody who would like to have a food stall because they couldn't get enough people to sign up. So looking at this data here and showing it to potential investors, potential food stalls, there's definitely evidence that this is a worthwhile event. So another great use case. As I mentioned before, as well as Wi-Fi being part of the infrastructure, the Welsh Government has heavily invested in something called LoRaWAN, which helps to connect the Internet of Things. So the Internet of Things can be any kind of object, sensor that is connected. So if you think about your smart homes, your Alexas, your cars even, traffic lights, basically anything that can have sensing on it. And LoRaWAN is a license-free spectrum, and that means that anyone can use it. It's not something that you have to pay to connect to. And it's a long-range wide area network, which wirelessly connects devices to the internet. So it sends small pieces of data over long distances. So it's like a radio signal, basically. It can't send, songs and videos like an internet connection can, but it can send small pieces of data. So is the door open? What temperature is this? It relies on batteries, which can last up to 10 years because they are just sending such small bits of data. So great in rural areas, used a lot in things like farms for measuring and for keeping track of things. It can also be used for two-way communication. So, for example, if you're using it for flood monitoring, you can say, right, when the water reaches this level, something needs to happen, a gate goes up or something like that. So the main use case is monitoring, alerting and responding. And there are loads of different use cases, which I'll just go through pretty quickly for you. So in terms of the town, I know parking is an issue. So you can use sensors for monitoring parking, traffic flows, like I said, flood monitoring, bin monitoring, even antisocial behavior. So you can have sound sensors that can send an alert if there's really loud noises at 2 o'clock in the morning at a public toilet. You might want to send somebody out there to see what's going on, things like that. So I'll show you some of these use cases. So like I said, you can also have IoT footfall counters if you don't have a Wi-Fi system in place. And these can be particularly useful on places that have a way in and a way out. So kind of park, an activity area, somewhere where you've got a check capacity for health and safety even. So if you know that you've got a venue that you can have 500 people in, you can have a sensor on the door rather than a person with a clicker. And again, this data, it's used a lot on things like markets, so to show stall holders, advertisers and things like that. So that's just another way of getting useful data. Air quality is another big one. So we monitor air quality across some of our towns in Gwynedd and Môn, and I know there are a lot of projects over Wales doing similar things. And you find, kind of obvious correlations. The air temperature goes down, the level of pollution goes up as people use their cars, their log burners and things like that. So it's things that we know, but It's also easier to drive change when you've got data. So if you're telling someone, not to drive their kids to school, to walk them, and if you did maybe a walk your kids to school day and evidence the difference in the air quality, that is going to be a lot more convincing to somebody than just saying, oh, you should probably walk. I've been logging my mood on my smartwatch, and everyone knows exercise improves your mood, and you kind of go, oh yeah, it does. When you actually look and you see the trends in black and white, shocked me, and it does make me think, okay, I do need to do more exercise. So it's things that but having data can kind of bring it to life a bit more. So as I think it was Menna that mentioned in Aberystwyth about parking, it's a big issue and it's something that gets brought up a lot. Some of the stats I've got here on my screen on the cost of searching for parking, the amount of pollution caused by cars looking for parking. So it's not just, the shops and the businesses that are suffering from people not being able to park. It's the environment as well, and the economy. So something really does need to be done. So there are different ways of monitoring parking. They can be through individual sensors on each parking space. So they've been used in Wrexham, and they've actually led to changing the policies in Wrexham City, because one of the things that they introduced during COVID was free parking in their long stay car park. But what they actually found was that people were just leaving their cars there while they were in work. Some people were leaving them there for weeks on end, and this meant that there was no parking for the people who wanted to pop in to go to the shop. So they're looking now at how they can change this to make it work for everyone, basically. Like I said, you can use the data of how full the car parks are to argue that you need more parking. And this is particularly important for things like accessible bays. Have you got enough accessible bays? Are they always full? You can even help with compliance by having pass that the sensor will recognise for people that have got an accessible parking pass. So if somebody is just parking illegally there, it can send a alert for someone to come out. It can also improve enforcement with real-time data. So I know lots of towns or lots of counties maybe only have a few enforcement officers, so they can look at the data and they can identify where they have the most kind of overstays, so they can target those areas. You can also use historic data to adapt pricing according to the demand. Do you want to charge a bit more for parking height of the summer? Whereas, do you want to lower it in mid-season to bring people in? There's all kinds of things you can do. And then obviously bringing that back to the footfall data so that you're assessing what impact is this having on the high street. Is it just that people are parking to go to the office and you're not seeing that conversion to the high street? Or is it something that is really helping to boost the local businesses? This is an example of one of the kind of pioneer smart towns in Wales. So Aberteifi, Cardigan have a dashboard where they can see all of the different kinds of sensors in the town. So by having bin sensors, this is a really popular one, and especially if you think about places like national parks or rural areas where a lorry will have to drive around to empty the bins as a kind of routine activity, when lots of them might not need to be emptied, or lots of them might need to be emptied a lot sooner. So this is a way of ensuring that you can use your resources efficiently. And you can also see how different things affect each other. So some of them might be common sense, but again, the data brings it to life. If you know that you have heavy footfall a certain week of the year, you might need to schedule more bin collections. You might be able to say that by the temperature and the time of year that you can predict the amount of footfall, so you can put more resources, more staff on, things like that. So that is when you're moving more towards being a smart, efficient, kind of interconnected town. Another example of this technology in place is monitoring water in planters. So this came out of the kind of holistic approach in developing a place plan, because one of the things that Abergavenny Town Council were really passionate about was their Britain in Bloom entry, and they were spending a lot of money on contractors watering all of their flower beds. So by introducing these sensors, and they're pretty cheap, you're talking, I think, about 70 quid per sensor, they can then monitor how much water is needed, and they, could drastically reduce the amount of resources used. To the degree where now they're actually installing water butts, so they'll be collecting rainwater to use for their watering, because they know exactly how much water they need, based on the year's data. So if you think of that for one town, but if you think of that, if you deployed it over a whole county, that's a lot of resources that you could be saving. And Dave, who some of you might know as Wrexham Smart Towns officer, has calculated the kinds of savings that you could be making from bin collections, from kind of smart bin collecting. And we're talking thousands. I mean, these figures, I don't know if they're using the current price of diesel. I think that might have been a bit higher at the time, but yeah, you're talking about saving 50% of an annual cost, which is about £63,000, and that's just on one diesel bin wagon. So, with so many councils struggling, it seems like this is quite a good solution, really, to make those savings. So what we're talking about is cutting costs, but without cutting quality of the services. So lots of people using them for things like toilets as well. So you can demonstrate a need and demonstrate the use as well. And with LoRaWAN being a license-free spectrum, there's also a big opportunity for businesses to be able to use this infrastructure. They can use sensors to kind of streamline their own businesses. Things like regulatory compliance, so having sensors on fridges and freezers, footfall counting to compare with their own till records. So if you have a shop, you know how many sales you're making, you might know how many people on the high street, but do you know how many people are coming in and just browsing and not selling anything? Do you know which areas people are browsing and not buying anything in? So technology that companies like Tesco have been using for about 20 years. There's a real opportunity now for high street businesses to kind of get on board and to be able to do similar things. And this is just an example of a business who was using those sensors. I think they've got about 20 fridges and freezers. So if you take into account a member of staff checking those twice a day, recording the temperature, this is all recorded for them now, and we'll send them a text if anything goes beyond the safety level of temperatures. So that's one less thing for a business owner to worry about. And it also helps them make sure that their fridges and freezers are working efficiently, and that they're not too energy heavy as well. So lots of savings to be made there. I'm just going to go through these quite quickly because I know that that we're kind of running out of time. Other things that can be kind of added to a smart town, and what we find is actually that smart towns projects with something tangible for people to kind of to focus on tend to be the most successful ones. So things like town apps or digital platforms, and as well as providing a service, these can also provide you with really valuable data about how people are using the towns. People can then report things on the apps. And you can identify different kind of patterns in these reports. There's a really cool app called Literati, which allows people to tag areas that they find litter. They can then, advocate for a litter picker. So you can also map out areas that are problems and maybe provide more bins there and things like that. So loads of potential there. Lots of town apps with, all of the town information in one place. again, this is great for tourists, but also really good to keep locals informed. So something that we hear time and time again across Wales and all different towns, there's things going on and the locals don't find out about them until afterwards. So I think there's a real need for that kind of community engagement and community communication. So another example of a platform that's in Rheolwr Prosiect now, and another one that is in lots of places and currently in Wrexham as well now. And visitors, Smart Towns also has a capability to share town data with business owners and for the councils to communicate with the towns and with the businesses through the platform as well. So that's more of a kind of Smart Towns ecosystem. And digital signage is another really popular one. So we've done a couple of pilots with these in Gwynedd. And the idea with this was that we found the kind of feeling among locals that Zipcord maybe wasn't supporting the local town as much as they could be, that locals weren't benefiting. And we got them to share their footfall data. And in 1 year, Zipcord had over 60,000 visits or visitors when the high street only had 20,000, and that's including people who lived there. So the scale of people going to the site that is about a mile away from the high street and not visiting the town was kind of breathtaking. So the idea with this screen was that local businesses can upload their adverts in real time, and people that are queuing to go on to Bounce Below or to check in for whatever activity they're doing can see these offers and can then go down into town after the visit. So we haven't actually had the latest footfall from Zipcord to see if the kind of if this is balanced at all, but we have had feedback from businesses saying that people have come to their businesses and said that they've seen the screen, so that's really positive. And we also had an example from the library in Wrexham where they actually asked Dave to take their poster down because they were at capacity for one of their events and they hadn't been at capacity ever at the library. So really shows how you can redirect footfall, and this can be something that could be really valuable to a lot of high streets. We're also looking to do a pilot in somewhere that's recently lost tourist information centre, how we can provide this information digitally on a board for people. So I've nearly lost my voice and I've tried to go through that as quick as I can. I hope I haven't lost you, but just to kind of recap what we're trying to do here is to help cut costs, not standards, run things more efficiently, allocate resources and improve public services, spaces and businesses, to make informed decisions, to have data to justify investment and to have better consultation with the public and better engagement. So endless opportunities. Obviously, there are some barriers. Someone mentioned earlier, engagement, kind of bringing the community along with you. Obviously, things like suspicion and conspiracies. There can also be logistic issues, like planning, infrastructure, and then things like time, resources, and people working in silos as well, something that comes up a lot. Often when a project starts, you'll find that there are already a few groups trying to do similar things. So a lot of it is to do with communication and collaboration, so bringing people together. And that's what we really try and do in our workshops. We try to get different groups from within a town, within a council together. They can help support each other's skills and knowledge-wise, but also ensure that there isn't any kind of overlapping going on with different projects. What we found is that it's really important to be transparent about what you're doing, what you're hoping to achieve, being upfront about, what data you're collecting, how people can access that data, how they can pick it out, helps to kind of preempt any issues. And like I mentioned earlier as well, that kind of commitment, we found that if you're focused on solving a problem that matters to the community, like Abergavenny's watering issue, that's when you see commitment to a project. And how do we get there? Obviously, the first question on everyone's lips is funding. And there is a fund within the Transforming Towns grants for digital towns. So this is for capital items to support baseline digital infrastructure. So things like Wi-Fi, LoRaWAN and IoT, and any of the things that we've just spoken about. To apply for this, you have to go through your local authority, and business improvement districts, town and community councils are all eligible. But you do have to do this through your town, through your local authority, and you do need appropriate place plans in place. So if this is something that you need any support with, we're obviously happy to help with that. We also have loads of different training opportunities and sessions like this one. I know this has been a bit of a whirlwind, but we do go in a lot more detail about different aspects. And these sessions are all free and available for you to join. I highly recommend you join tomorrow's Introduction to Cybersecurity. This is particularly tailored towards town councils, and it's not even particularly for people with Smart Towns projects. It's the real basic kind of bare minimum that you should be doing to stay safe online. So I really recommend that, and all of our events, to be honest, but I suppose I would say that. So I'm going to wrap up now so that I have time for some questions. Please make sure that you're following us, that you're keeping up to date with all our events. And yeah, diolch yn fawr. Does anyone have any questions? Oh, sorry, I've just seen that there was a question earlier. What is a mobile probe request? I hope I answered that when I explained about the Wi-Fi. So it's your phone sending out a signal, the MAC address, to say that it's in the area, and that is what's counted. Does that answer the question, or do you have any other questions? Helen, I can see that you've got your hand up. You're welcome to go off mute. Hi, Helen.
Hi. Yeah, the question I have, so I have a community interest company shop in the centre of Brecon. So we use profit for purpose in terms of supporting our local community of businesses and advocating responsible tourism as part of that. Now, I know in Brecon, I don't think the full mesh network is complete yet. So I'd be interested to see if you knew any sort of timescales on when that might be complete. I see the Wi-Fi is already existing in some place, but as a organisation, how do I get access to seeing this data?
So my understanding of the situation in Brecon is that it will be displayed on Patreon. So that means that it'll be open access. So I'll put the website in the chat.
Okay.
So you should be able to go on it and access that data freely, and you'll also be able to compare it with other towns as well from across North Wales and Mid Wales, obviously.
All right. Okay. Okay. Brilliant.
But I think it'd be good to have to set up a separate chat, Helen, because we are planning on doing a workshop in Brecon before the summer.
Okay.
So yeah, it'd be great to have a chat about that.
Yeah. Okay.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks.
Kiki, we've got a comment here from Emily, interested to find out if anyone has experienced best practice, re how best to share this data with local businesses.
Yeah, so there are, I don't know if I'd call it best practice. Obviously, Patreon is a way of doing this that takes the kind of responsibility off the local authority or whoever's running the project to share the data, because it's shared automatically. Obviously, there's a kind of hosting fee for that. Otherwise, we've got some councils that do good kind of monthly reports and things like that. I know Wrexham is sending monthly stats out because they say that the businesses don't have time to kind of delve into the data. but again, that's a bit of a balance because they're not having the real-time data and they don't have the opportunity to delve into it. I think your question might be worth raising at the online networking session, Emily. I don't know if you're planning on joining that. So that is when lots of people who have projects set up kind of get together to discuss. So we could maybe get some more feedback then. Perfect. We're also more than happy to do a workshop with your business groups, local businesses, on how they can be using the data as well. So that's something that we could have a chat about as well, if you like. Brilliant, thank you. Oh, I've just realised that I'm still sharing my screen, sorry. Does anyone have any other questions? We've still got a few minutes left. I can see someone typing there, so I'll just give it a minute. Can we please have a copy of the presentation? Yeah, of course. So I'll put this on YouTube as soon as I can, and I'll send you a copy of the slides and a link as well. Diolch yna. Oh, thanks, Catherine. I'm glad you found it interesting. Someone typing, so I'll just hold on for a few more minutes. You're obviously welcome to unmute yourself if there's anything you'd like to ask. Thank you. Lovely feedback there. Diolch yn fawr. So if no one has any further questions, then I will say diolch yn fawr iawn again. Thank you very much. And please don't hesitate to contact us if there's anything else we can help you with, any questions or anything you'd like to carry on discussing. Diolch Sian. Thank you Beth. Diolch. Diolch yn fawr. Welai chi'n fuan. Thank you very much.